tell us a little bit about your appointment to the Las Vegas Convention Visitors Authority. Were you surprised that Mayor Weir did that, considering it's a plum assignment that's usually reserved for the mayor? I mean, it's a little unusual to have, and I'm not.
I know. Have somebody completely unqualified like myself be appointed to something.
No, actually, I think you're the most qualified person. Personally and professionally was very delighted to see your appointment to that board because of your background and your history and your experience. But it's just very unusual. You're the first non-mayor to be appointed to that particular position.
Well, part of that is my own naivety. I didn't realize that there was considered plums or non-plums. Plums or whatever else you want to figs or whatever you want to call
Figs, prunes.
Prunes. I didn't know. So somewhere after the election, I just happened to think about, I might be able to help out on that commission, just thinking that because I've had experience. I worked, for those who don't know, I was at the GM at the Casa for 8 years. I was involved in the Mesquite Resort Association, the LVCVA, and all the events, the funding, the requests.
Yeah,
I've
quite a
known those
background.
people for a long time. I've known Rossi Rollencotter and Julian Duga and all those people for a long time. So I thought, well, heck, I'll call Mark and just tell him I'll volunteer for that if you have any issues, not thinking anything about the politics of the deal or anything. And he listened, didn't say much. I mentioned it to somebody and they said, "You out of your mind, that'll never happen. That's a plum." And that's the first time I heard that. And I'm going, I wonder why that is. And it never occurred to me. So I just thought, well, it is what it is. And I never discussed it with Mark. I never thought about it again, really. And he called me one day and he said, "Hey, I'm going to talk about some appointments, and this is what I'm going to appoint you to." And I thought, great. And, and I give him all the credit in the planet. I mean, he apparently did something that was completely out of the box and is based on history anyway. And I think he did a good job with the appointments, with Councilman Littman as the health. He was in, kind of in healthcare and psychology and so forth, and in public administration or teaching. Craig has been very much involved in the RTC and so forth,
Yes.
and he's a great appointee there. And Mark's on the Clark County School District deal, and so I think he made thoughtful decisions, and Councilman Littman at the Nellis support deal, and he's very active in veteran affairs and so forth. So I think he made a good selections, and I give him kudos for doing it without any personal thought. It was based on what his perceived qualifications were of us. And
Yeah.
I think
Well, a couple weeks ago, at a couple council meetings ago, you spoke about some of the money that's generated back to Mesquite from the LVCVA. I thought it was pretty fascinating, the synopsis you gave of how that whole thing works, and I'd like for you to kind of go back through that.
Sure.
Just a little
I
bit.
don't have my notes here, so I can't give you the dollar, but I can sure give you the high-level conceptual, and it's real simple. The LVCVA makes all their money from room tax.
Okay.
That's it, essentially. So that's what they get to spend. And so there's this big machine there, the LVCVA, and it has the convention center and Cashman Complex, and it's got all the staff and this. So it has to pay for all of that. Then it pays for the advertising contracts with R&R Advertising, the consulting contracts for people that are lobbying on their behalf, and I'll speak to one of them that was kind of interesting. But there's overhead. We'll just call it overhead.
Okay.
And they generate revenue again through conventions. That's some ancillary revenue, but most of it's sales tax. So bottom line is, you start with $100 million and you got X amount of expenses, and you wind up with $90 million to pay for the overhead. Then the rest goes to all the things: the advertising, the events, the just back to the cities into their general fund. All of these allocations, and it's to City of Las Vegas, then City of Henderson, Boulder City, Laughlin, Mesquite, and all of these things.
Okay.
Of course, you know, there's less than, if there's $100 million of income and only 90 million left, or 80 million, whatever the number is, very few people can get 100% of what they put in back.
Yes.
We get more than we put in back.
Wow.
Which is a thorn in many of the other jurisdictions' side. Henderson, Boulder City, a lot of these others. Boulder City doesn't generate very much, but, you know, it's Las Vegas, the Strip, you know, downtown. I mean, North Las Vegas, you know, they don't get as much as they put in.
Then how is it that Mesquite does? Are you that good?
I'm not that good. It's been a formula that has been, well, and then from a practical standpoint, we have had events that have been going on for years, like the long drive, like the cook-off, some of these things that they have been giving us money for.
Okay.
And they continue to give us money even as revenues drop, and part of that is the overhead. I mean, you know, we get some of the overhead. I mean, we get, let's just say for round numbers, we put in $1 million in room tax revenue.
Okay.
We get $1.2 million or whatever it was back, million.
Okay.
So we don't get a whole lot more, but we
Okay.
get a little bit more.
Right.
And if you look at then you take on top of that the allocation of overhead, we get even more back. So, but it's not real money we get back. It's just the allocation of overhead that we get and pay,
Okay.
whatever. So it's
Okay.
kind of a shell game in one respect, but the hard dollars back, we get more than we put in. Not much more, but no one else does.
Wow.
Which is kind of and we're small enough that it's not impactful enough. You know, if it's a
Nobody
couple
hasn't
100,000,
noticed
yeah, I mean, it's not gonna be, that's the half an event at the MGM, let alone the city of Las Vegas. So,
Okay.
I hope nobody in Vegas reads your paper, because it's gonna be trouble for us. But that's the truth, you know, it's a thorn in their side. And I was gonna mention, one of the consultants, Tom Skanke, and he does the transportation consulting for the LVCVA, which is huge because it involves, I mean, they do a lot of work in California and Arizona because it's getting people from there to here. So
Right.
they're responsible for working with California, Arizona to improve the interstates and the roads and the widenings and so forth. And the LVCVA is
Okay.
involved in that.
Okay.
Because the easier it is to get here, the more are coming.
Right.
So that doesn't have a lot of impact on Mesquite, but the high-speed rail is the next thing that appears to be a reality. And the first leg will be between Las Vegas and Victorville, I believe.
Yeah.
And then down to Palmdale, or Rosemont, Palmdale, and then to Phoenix. And as a part of this high-speed rail, it's a national movement to get high-speed rail.
Right.
Eastern region, western region.
Right.
There's a whole plan being developed. And I asked specifically, I said, so when is the next phase, you know, which is like Denver to Salt Lake to Vegas,
Okay.
and Albuquerque to Vegas, and then Seattle, and, you know, and all of these, San Francisco, and how, and the links, the medium speed rail, the links that will.
Yeah. Okay.
So when is this plan going to be? And they said it's many years off. I mean, the reality is the funding is not there,
Right.
but the plan is being developed.
Okay.
And I said, so where does Mesquite fit in this plan? And he said, interesting, you should ask that. Barstow was fighting for a long time, and I can't remember what the fights were about, whether it was environmental, whether it was about the location, whether it was about the stops, the thing, whatever. They're out. It's going right through them at 150 miles an hour and stopping in Victorville.
Oh, wow.
Because they fought the process, and finally, whoever the commission was said, the heck with them. We'll go to the people who want it.
Right.
So it's Victorville now. I don't want to be the Barstow.
Right.
I want Mesquite to be somewhere in this thing, and apparently the 90-mile, it's down by, the Vegas terminus will be somewhere south of town, you know, down by
Right. Down by
South Point, or,
Prim, or
yeah, south, I think it's down,
somewhere between Prim and South Las
yeah,
Vegas.
somewhere in there. Anyway,
Okay.
It's 90 miles, and they said that's the minimum, because 150 miles an hour, it takes X amount of time to get there, and X amount of time to slow down.
So you're stopping as soon as you're starting?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you have to be functional, you have to have some area where you can travel at max speed. And so Mesquite is in the profile of being a stop. And so I've asked the consultant to give me the contacts of who we contact to get involved in this process early and in the
Wow.
master plan, so to speak.
Yeah, okay.
And this was through the LBCVA and the information that we got from the consultant. So whether it's a reality or not, I don't know. But if we're not in the plan, it's not a reality, period.
Right.
So I just want to make sure we don't get forgotten. And
Okay.
then we need some land that's along, because we come down the I-15 corridor, but we
Right.
have a lot of land available along I-15.
Yeah.
So we are a perfect, it's like 40 acres, 28 to 40 acres or something that you need for a station and parking and the blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So there is some opportunity there, but that's probably 15 plus
Yeah.
years, you know?
Yeah. Are you still gonna, you won't be on council then, you'll be.
I'll be
term
dead.
limited.